been for Ruth, and oh, they have been telling me such terrible things! But they can't be true, that our dear father had been killed, and that it was you, Chebron, who killed dear Paucis. But of course I did not believe them. I knew it was all their wickedness." "Never mind about that, dear," Chebron said. "We will talk about all this afterward. The first thing is to get you away from this place. Jethro and Amuba will soon decide what is best to be done. Are there any others in the house?" "There is one other man," Ruth replied, "and an old woman. I think the other man is at the door with the chariot." "I had better tell Jethro," Chebron said, and he again went into the room and told Jethro what he had heard. "We will seize the woman first," Jethro said, "and then go out round the house and come down from the other way upon the chariot. The man will have heard the outcry, and if we came suddenly out of the door, might leap into the chariot and drive off before we could overtake him. But if we come upon it from behind we shall secure him." "But you have forgotten to bind Plexo," Chebron said. "Plexo is dead," Jethro replied. "As he fell his arm was beneath him, and the knife with which he had intended to strike you pierced his heart. I am very glad that you observed the way I spoke to Amuba. It was of the greatest importance that the name should not be mentioned. This affair will cause a tremendous excitement. There is nothing to connect us with Ptylus, and it may be supposed that it is the work of some malefactors who came down from the hills in search of plunder. The fact that Mysa was here and was carried away is not in itself any proof that we had a hand in it, for Libyan robbers might well have carried her and Ruth away to make slaves of. Plexo caught but a glimpse of us, and doubtless only rushed out and called the men to come to his father's assistance. At any rate, let there be no names mentioned. Now let us finish our work here." The female servant was soon found and bound. Then the 4 prisoners were placed in different rooms, and fastened securely to the wall or pillars. "Never put 2 prisoners together," Jethro said. "Always remember that. Tie one man up and you may keep him; tie up 2 and they are sure to escape. They can bite through each other's cords, or untie the knot with their teeth, or possibly even with their fingers." "Now, what is the next thing to do?" Amuba asked. "The next thing is to have a consultation. Do you, Chebron, go into the garden to the girls. Amuba and I will deal with the other man." As soon as Jethro and Amuba had left him Chebron rejoined the girls. "You saved my life, Ruth. I shall never forget it." "You saved me from the crocodile, my lord. It was but a push and he fell. I scarce know how it was done." "Your quickness saved my life all the same, Ruth. I had not noticed him till you cried out, and then it would have been too late. We have been anxious for you also, Ruth. We hoped that you might be with Mysa, but none saw you go out with her." "My place was with my mistress," Ruth said quietly, "and she was more than a mistress, she was a friend to me." "But how came you here, Chebron?" Mysa again asked. "And why are you dressed up like a peasant woman? It is not seemly in any man, much less in you, a priest. And Amuba and Jethro, too, they are dressed as peasants, and their faces seem changed, I do not know how. They look darker, and I should not have known them had I not recognized Jethro's voice." "It is a long story, dear, and I will tell you all presently; and we want to hear your story too. Ah, here come the others. It is to them, Mysa, far more than to me that you owe your rescue. I may know more of the learning of our people, but I have none of the readiness and coolness of Amuba, while Jethro is as prudent as he is brave. It would have fared hardly with me as well as with you, Mysa, had it not been for these good friends." Mysa went up to them as they approached. "Oh, Jethro, I feel how much I owe to you, and to you, Amuba. My courage had all but given way, although Ruth strove so hard to give me hope, and I fear I could not have long withstood the threats of that bad man. You cannot tell what joy I felt when I recognized your voice." "Our joy was as great in finding you as yours in seeing us," Jethro replied. "Amuba and I would gladly have laid down our lives for you. And now let us have a consultation. There is much to decide upon and arrange. Let us go round to the garden at the other side of the house. There we can sit and talk, and at the same time keep watch that no one else enters. It is not likely that anyone will do so, for the place is secluded, and none would know that these men were here. Still a peasant might enter to sell fowls or fruit, therefore it were best to keep an eye upon the entrance." They went round to some seats placed beneath trees on the other side of the house.
A fountain worked by the water of a little rill on the hillside played in front of them, and a few tame waterfowl swam in a shallow basin around it. Everything was still and peaceful, and to Chebron it seemed as if the events of the last 3 weeks had been a hideous dream, and that they were again sitting in the garden of their house at Thebes.
"Now, first of all," Mysa said, "I must have my questions answered. How are my father and mother and everyone?"
Jethro took Amuba's arm and turned away. "We will leave you, Chebron, to tell Mysa what has taken place. It will be better for you to do so alone." Ruth rose from her seat to leave also, but Mysa put her hand on her arm.
"I am frightened, Ruth. Stay with me."
"You told me, Mysa," Chebron began, "that they had told you tales that our father was dead, and that it was I who killed Paucis."
"Yes, but I did not believe them, Chebron. Of course I did not for a moment. At least not for a moment about you; but when I thought of those bad men at the gate and the crash we heard and the noise of the people rushing in shouting, I was afraid that perhaps it might be true about our father. But oh, Chebron, surely it is not so."
"Alas, Mysa, it is true. They cruelly slew our father. I wish I had been there to have fallen by his side. But you know Amuba and I were away. Jethro fought desperately to the last, and would have died with him had not our father himself commanded that in case anything happened to him he was to take charge of me, and to carry me out of the land." Mysa was crying bitterly now. Presently she looked up.
"But why should you want to leave the land, Chebron? Surely it is not true that you—"
The thing seemed too terrible for her to put into words. "That I killed poor Paucis? That is true also, Mysa." Mysa gave a little cry of horror.
"Oh, Ruth!" she cried, "this is too dreadful."
Ruth put her arms round the sobbing girl.
"You may be sure, Mysa, that your brother did not do it intentionally." "But it is all the same," Mysa cried. "It was the sacred cat, you know, the cat of Bubastes."
"It was, Mysa, and I thought at first, as you did, that although it was the result of an accident the anger of the gods would be poured out against me, that I was as one accursed, whose life was forfeited in this world, and whose spirit was destined to dwell in unclean beasts after death. But when I told my father all, he reassured me, and told me not to fear in any way the wrath of the gods." He then related to his sister the manner in which the cat had been killed, the steps he and Amuba had taken to conceal the body, and his avowal to his father of his fault.
"I see it was not your fault, Chebron; but you know the laws of Egypt, and the punishment for killing even a common cat. How could our father say that the gods would not be angry?"
"I cannot tell you all he said, Mysa, though some day had I remained with you I might have done so; but he did say so, and you know how wise and good he was. Therefore I want you to remember what he said, so that when I am gone you will not all your life think of me as one accursed."
"Oh, I should never do that!"
Mysa exclaimed, starting up and throwing her arms round her brother's neck.
"How could you think so? But why are you talking about going, and where are you going?"
"I am going, Mysa, because the people of Egypt do not view this matter in the same light as my father, but are hunting all the land to find and slay me and Amuba; for, not knowing the exact truth, they put us down as equally guilty. So we must fly. Our father gave full directions to Jethro, and we should by this time have been a long distance away had it not been that we stayed to find and rescue you."
"Then if the other things they told me are true, Chebron, it may be true too that the letter they showed me ordering me to consent to marry Plexo was from my mother. How could she tell me that when she knew that I hated him, and she has over and over again spoken scornfully of his family before me?"
"What did she say?" Chebron asked.
"She said that now disgrace had fallen on the family I might think myself very fortunate in obtaining such an offer."
Chebron was silent. He knew that his mother had never shown any earnest love either for Mysa or himself, that her thoughts were entirely devoted to dress and entertainments, and that any love she had to give had been bestowed upon his brother. "I fear it is true, Mysa."
"But I will never marry Plexo!" Mysa exclaimed passionately. "My father always said I should never marry a man I disliked."
"You will never marry Plexo, Mysa. He is dead." Ruth uttered an exclamation. "He died by his own hand, Ruth, that is, by an accident. As he fell his dagger pierced his own heart, and when Jethro went to look at him he was dead."
"The Lord requited him for his evil," Ruth said firmly. "All things are in his hands. As I did not mean to slay him, I lament not over his death. Besides, he strove to take your life, and had I had a dagger in my hand I should assuredly have used it." "Then what is to become of me?" Mysa asked.
"You must go back to your mother, Mysa. There is naught else for you to do."
"I will not!" Mysa exclaimed. "She never loved me. She would have married me against my will to Plexo although she knew he was bad, and that I hated him. She would make me marry some one else who was rich regardless of my wishes. No, Chebron,